Hey everybody, good afternoon. Jason here from Murideo. Today's webinar, we've got some really cool stuff we're going to show you today. Special guest here from Portrait Displays is Tyler Pruitt. How you doing, Tyler?
Good. How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Awesome, man. How are things up in Washington?
Great. The weather has been like sunny and 75 degrees all week. So
Nice. That's awesome. It's rainy here today, but hey, that's Florida for you. So I know today we're going to talk about Calman and some of the new features and some of the new stuff that you're excited to show everybody. It just dropped like last week, right?
yeah, we released RC1, which is our release candidate 1 on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's no major bugs, then we'll be releasing the GM in the next day or two. So we're
Cool.
really excited.
Awesome. Awesome. So yeah, so guys, we're going to talk a little bit about Calman, show you some of the new features. I think Tyler, you've got a few slides to show us.
Yeah, let me share my screen.
Sure thing. And guys, while if you're watching this live while Tyler is sharing his screen, you can move the there is an adjustment slider where you can make his screen bigger, make a camera smaller, things like that. So if you're watching live, feel free to use that to your advantage.
Okay, can you see that?
Yes, sir, we sure can.
Okay, cool.
Very pretty.
So we're announcing our new color engine. This is our new calibration engine for generating 3D LUTs. And we've been working on this for over 2 years, our engineering and color science teams. So we've been testing it for months on end, and we're really excited to get it into everybody's hands so they can start using it. So what is it? It's a new color engine built from the ground up. It's 100% new code. Nothing from the previous calibration engine was reused. It's 100% new code. It was designed with HDR and wide color gamut workflows in mind. It's also optimized to handle the latest display technologies, and it can even be tuned for individual display behavior. That's a big feature.
Awesome.
And it pretty much eliminates any possibility of posterization and banding that you could sometimes get with the previous engine.
Mm-hmm.
So the way this is going to work is we're not just releasing it for every 3D LUT device right away, because we want to do extensive testing for each device to make sure it's optimized for that, either display or LUT box. So right now it supports all the LG TVs. It also supports the LCD ones, but the most popular use case of Calman for LGs is the OLED TV. So it goes all the way back to the 2018 C8 models, the B8 models, and those all the way up until the present and the new 2021 models that are supported in Calman 2021. It also supports the ASUS ProArt HDR display, the PA32 UCX family. There's been a couple of releases. One had a different screen material to reduce off-axis blooming and stuff like that, but it supports all of those. It also supports all the BenQ monitors that are supported in Calman. And it also supports the new Dell 3221Q HDR computer monitor. And then, like I said, we're working on many more displays, and they're coming soon. And one interesting thing that we're kind of changing the way we do things release-wise is you're gonna see this year a lot more frequent releases of Calman. Instead of having huge major release, like 3 major releases, there's one major release, and then we're gonna have more frequent kind of point releases throughout the year, so we can get new features and hardware support in people's hands sooner.
So if you're a current Calman user, you guys will, I'm sure, broadcast the heck out of that stuff when the updates come, right?
Absolutely.
Cool. Very good.
Make sure you're following us on social media, and because I know sometimes like promotional emails go into people's promotional folders, and sometimes they don't always see email blasts. So
Sure.
check us out on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, wherever you like to hang out. So that's that. Calman 2021 RC1 is available now. You can go download it. And then I thought we would, go and actually look at some of the changes in Calman, because there's a couple other new features. So let me.
Yeah, and real quick, Tyler, too,
Yeah.
just because I know I bumped into this and somebody else texted me about it yesterday. You guys are recommending that they totally uninstall any old versions of Calman before downloading the new one, yes?
So that was just a bug in the beta program. So if you're
Oh,
a member of the beta program, there was a bug in the installer where it would not update all the LG related files, so it prevented you from connecting to an LG TV.
Oh,
But
okay.
that has been fixed, and you can upgrade without doing a clean install.
Nice. And also too, guys, there is a question box here. So if you have any questions for Tyler or myself, looks like our one of our marketing team members, Nick, is watching the question box. Thank you, Nick, for being here. If you guys do have any questions, feel free to type them in. Nick will field those to Tyler and I as best as he can, and then we'll have some time at the end for questions too. So just wanted to lay that out there before we got too deep.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing the screen right now, and then I'm going to switch to my actual Calman. Okay, can you see that now?
Yes, sir. And just for Tyler, just while we're talking about this, I really want the screen to fill up all the way for the people who are watching. So I'm going to turn my camera off for a little bit.
Okay, so can we see the screen is
Yep.
large?
Now
Okay.
it's full screen. Perfect.
So with testing our new Aurora color engine, I did a lot of research on how temperature affects measurements in a display, especially with OLED. And I found that over the course of profiling a 3D LUT, and this is more than just doing the lightning LUT. This is like doing the 9 cube or the 17 cube or 13 cube, where you're measuring hundreds to thousands of points. Maintaining the temperature of the panel is very critical to getting a good calibration or getting the best calibration possible. So I did some research with a infrared thermometer, one of these ones that has a laser in it and you like squeeze the trigger, pointed at it. And what I did is I calibrated the TV to 100 nits, Rec 709. Then I played a bunch of different content and measured the screen temperature. And it would pretty much always be around the same thing, which is about 85 degrees Fahrenheit. And this is in my house when it was about 68 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So what I found is you want to maintain the temperature that normal content would give you throughout your calibration process, throughout the profiling. And what I found is previously we would do our calibration, say we're going to read 2000 points for a 13 cube. The panel would go from like 80 degrees and it would get up to like 95 degrees over the course of the profiling, but it would never hit over 90 during normal content. And as we've seen previous with these panels is as they heat up, the white point shifts towards green. So in essence, the panel is shifting underneath you, and then you create a correction, and then you measure the panel, your validation, all at one temperature, and that can cause larger errors than you would normally see. So we added a new feature that allows you to insert a patch of any brightness that you want. It could be black or it could be any level of gray, full field in between each reading. And where you would do that in Calman is you could go to our excuse me, sorry, I didn't mute my phone. You could go to the application preferences or measurement options, and you used to just see this area, enable full field pattern insertion, right? This is what we would use previously with LGs for two reasons. One, to defeat the burn-in protection algorithm so the TV didn't dim while we were performing the calibration, and another for HDRs to let the panel cool down after every so often of readings. But now we added a second option called patch count based pattern insertion. So the options are pattern insertion frequency tells us after how many patches do you want us to trigger this. And so if you enter 1, it would be after every patch. And that's kind of how it's intended to be used. And then duration in seconds, how long you want it to be displayed, and then the level. Now, I first experimented with putting black in between, and that did bring an improvement. But what I found even a bigger improvement was doing a dark gray. I don't know if it's just to keep all the subpixels turned on or just to keep it from doing this on, off, but I found I got even better results with dark gray. Now we do embed this same thing in the LG workflow. So if I go, this is the professional workflow. If I go to Sdr Calibration, go to next, pick my color space targets. Now we have this thing that I labeled pattern stabilization, because that is really
Nice.
kind of what it's intended for. And if you click this set SDR default, it will populate these with the SDR defaults. And what you want to do is, the default is every patch put up a 10% gray for 1 second. And what I've found is it's probably a good idea to buy one of these infrared thermometers. They're only like, you know, like between $20 and $50 on Amazon.
Sure.
You probably don't want to get the cheapest one. I've always found if you buy like one level up from the cheapest option, then that's the better way to do it.
I really like the one that has the LCD screen and shows you like live time, the heat maps and stuff. That thing's like $300.
Yeah. Yeah. But because what you can do is you can first of all, you can do this experiment yourself with normal content. Because if, say, you want to do 150 nits, then you want to find out what real content makes the TV at 150 nits, so you can hit that temperature, not the temperature that I found based on 100 nits, right? So you want to find that. And also, depending on which meter you have, I found that slower meters need a longer time in between, because the patch is up longer for a slower meter versus like a Klein or a CR100. So you might need to tweak this duration. Either, you know, go longer. If you have a slower meter, you might want to try 1.5 seconds or 2 seconds. And it'll kind of depend on your setup, like how bright you want to calibrate your SDR to, also what meter you have and how long it takes to read, because you might need to tweak this based on actual temperature measurement. So what I would do is, while it was running like the 9 cube, it's like every 5 minutes I would read the temperature. And if it was slowly increasing, then I would increase the duration, and then that would cause it to, the next time I run, to not slowly increase the temperature over time. It would maintain it. But if it's too long, then in theory, it could start lowering from your warm-up temperature. And one way I found to warm up the TV pretty easily is the newer LGs have this gallery mode. It's like these paintings and stuff.
Oh yeah, sure.
So by default, that's really bright. The picture mode is called gallery, but if you go into gallery and lower the OLED light to kind of what your target would be for your calibration, so around 30 if you're doing 100 nits, and maybe, you know, 40 or 45 if you're doing 150 or 200 nits. And just let that play for like a half an hour or 45 minutes.
Right.
And that should bring it up to the temperature that a normal SDR content would bring it. I found that was pretty much equal to letting real content play. Plus, you don't have to like hook anything up or forget it.
Oh, sure.
You know, you just turn it on, switch to gallery mode, and go do something else while it warms up. So you might need to tweak this duration for your specific setup. And you could also try messing around with the level. You know, I found that 10% was much better than black, but you might experiment with raising that up even higher. Depends on, maybe you have a higher temperature you need to hit. And even if you set this to 0.5, it's still not getting hot enough to the temperature you want. So that's one of the major new features with Calman 2021. And it really helps you get the best results possible if you're calibrating an LG OLED. I'm still doing more research on what you would set this to for HDR, but since for HDR we're only doing the matrix LUT still, it would really only affect the grayscale. So I'm still doing some. It seems like there's a more wider swing in how hot the TV gets in HDR mode for different movies, because they just have a bigger range that they could be, where SDR is kind of, it's always kind of in the same range. I did find that like talking head news broadcasts were a lot brighter than a movie would be.
Sure.
But you know, I don't know how much people care about the accuracy of their news broadcast, but you know.
There's a couple questions, Tyler. One says from Steve. He says, if you notice the panel is heating up during the profile, can you pause and change the duration value? Do you still have the pause feature for the LUTs?
Yes. I believe so.
Okay.
I haven't tested that particularly. but I think that function still works, the pause.
Okay. And another question came in from Fabio, and actually I had this question too. Is it appropriate to use the pattern insertion if you're using the pattern stabilization, or should you run both?
So it depends. So this is kind of a tricky thing. If you're just a consumer, yes. If you're working in a post-production facility and you use the service remote to disable the dimming stuff,
Sure.
for SDR, technically you wouldn't need it. But you have to be very careful. If you leave that stuff turned off, you can void your warranty and stuff like
sure.
that. So
Yeah.
also for HDR, it is absolutely still necessary just because of because the panel heats up so much more in HDR.
Totally, yeah.
We need it to let it cool down much longer. But like I said, I'm still doing experiments with HDR.
Mm-hmm.
I mostly focused on the SDR testing for in the build-up because we're trying to, SDR is so much more critical, especially in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
These TVs are used as SDR reference monitors, and it needs to be perfect. And people know that in HDR they don't match the reference monitor perfectly, anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So there's kind of it's not as critical that HDR be perfect because it will never match perfectly, anyways, because of just technology limitations.
Sure.
So yeah.
So for the pattern stabilization, we had a question come in from Sylvan. For the duration and the level, if you do have a fast meter like a Klein or CR100, you can probably leave the duration at 1, right?
Yeah, like I said, it really depends on your combination, and that's why I recommend everybody buying one of those infrared thermometers.
Yeah.
And looking at what is the temperature rising during your profiling or not. You might just need to make it 1.5 seconds or 1.75,
Mm-hmm.
and then it'll be kind of a known quantity after that, because it's really about your meter and how fast it reads, and do you configure it for multiple readings or not, or reading averaging. Some people do,
Right.
some people don't. So there's no real one size fits all for this value. So there's probably going to be some experimentation done. But what I've found working with some post-production facilities is once they figured out the correct value, it was the same for every
Good.
OLED that they did.
That's good news. And Mark asks, have you found panel to panel variation with respect to temperature fluctuations? Or
I haven't
like you just
seen
said.
any, but then again, it's not like we have hundreds of panels.
Yeah,
So,
exactly right.
but I wouldn't, just based on what I've seen, I wouldn't expect it to.
Yeah, cool. Good. And those are all the questions so far. Thanks, guys. Thanks for bringing those questions to us, and keep them coming.
Okay, and so one thing I wanted to show people when we actually connect to the LG, so I'll connect in a second and go to the 3D LUT page, is, so I'm going to connect to my TV. LG.
What he's doing right here, guys, in case you haven't seen this before, with specific TVs and LUT boxes and things like that, you can have Calman talk directly to the display to make the adjustments for the 1D LUT and the 3D LUT. So right now, Tyler's just connecting Calman to his LG TV. A couple things you need to know. Make sure the laptop and the the laptop and the TV are on the same network. And you will need to know the IP address of the TV. The other way of doing it is connecting Ethernet straight from the TV to the PC, and it'll kind of create its own network, and you can find the IP address that way too. A couple ways to do it. I've had no problems in normal situations and normal environments using it over Wi-Fi, but I know a lot of people might be a little more inclined to go hardwired.
Let me turn on my generator. It was in gallery mode, so it wasn't.
Oh, nice. Cool. TV's connected too, by the way.
One thing you'll also see is I renamed all of the SDR modes to say SDR in front of them, because this was a common thing that would trip people up, is they would do an Sdr calibration in cinema mode, and then they would go to do an HDR cinema mode, but they would still select the Sdr cinema mode.
Oh, yeah.
So now it's very obvious that you're not in HDR cinema now. So all the Sdr ones now have an Sdr prefix to kind of
Nice.
eliminate that possibility for new users to get confused. So now if I'm going to do, actually, let me plug in a meter because it won't even let me try an AutoCal without a meter. Hold on.
Got a couple more questions coming in. Thank you guys so much for the questions. There's one question Glenn asks that will wait to the end here. So right now you're just getting your generator connected, right?
Yep.
Cool.
Or I connected to the meter. So now if I hit AutoCal on the 3D LUT part, I want to show you where you can do the Aurora color engine calibration, and if you want to still do it for some reason, you can do the legacy method. So this should be pretty familiar for everybody. The calibration types are the same, except there's no IR profiling anymore.
Oh, wow,
the new does not support IR profiling. So you would select one of these. But if you did want to do the legacy method, if you check this checkbox, now you have your IR profiling again, if you would still like to use that.
Tyler, was that just like, I mean, I noticed just experimenting with the IR, the time base or the point base, it got to a diminishing return situation when I went from like, 2,000 points to like 3,500, then to like, 5,000 maybe.
And what I found with the fixed grid ones is even with just the fixed grid 9 with the new color engine, it pretty much gets better results than any combination that you could do on the previous one as far as color accuracy numbers. Now, in some cases, if you have a little bit more time, the 13 I think is a kind of a good middle ground where it's 3 times the amount of points as the 9 point, but it doesn't take hours and hours. It's essentially 2,000 points. So if you have a fast meter, it should only take like 30 minutes tops or something.
Sure.
So, and we support all the way up to 21, which is close to 10,000 points. But I've ran one of those and I've seen very little increase in accuracy just because
over like the 9 point.
Over the 13.
Gotcha.
There is a slight accuracy bump with the 13 over the 9, but honestly, I've been shocked with how good the 9 point is.
Nice.
Like it's really good. A lot of our post-production facilities in Hollywood are using just the 9 point now with how good it is and how fast it is.
Calpo, who's a regular here on our webinars, thank you, Calpo, for your question. He says, do the Aurora color engines, is that supported on the Lumigen Radiance Pro and the MadVR Envy for 3D LUTs?
Not yet.
Okay,
that's
cool.
Those are some of the devices that will be also added as the coming soon. So
cool.
Stay tuned.
Nice. Thank you, Calpo, for the question.
That's on the agenda.
The to-do list.
Yep.
There you go.
Okay, so that was that. One other thing is we have, if you are doing an ASUS HDR calibration, there is a separate HDR workflow. We also have done some modifications to some of the AutoCal workflows. Now they default to Delta ITP for the AutoCal formula.
Nice.
Just because I don't see any reason why you would want to select anything else these days. So we just make it the default, and we actually remove the drop down in the workflow. You can still go change it up here if you want to, like, hey, I don't want it. You can select anything you want. But by default, we're now defaulting the AutoCal formula to Delta ITP.
And with the new LUT engine, are you seeing? I remember, working with this before, flipping between like DE2000 and ITP. That DE2000 would tell you that the low end or the dark end, looking pretty good, and then you flip over to ITP and it's like, ooh, maybe not. So with the new LUT engine and those types of things, is that gonna be improved, do you think?
I mean, that's the fundamental of that's just Delta E2000 hiding bad results
Right,
historically. But
right.
at the time, we didn't have anything better.
Sure, sure.
Delta E2000 was really never meant for displays. It was meant for reflective measurements of like fabrics and stuff
Oh,
like
gotcha.
that. And
Hmm.
um, and if anybody wants to watch me and Catherine's presentation from SIMPD 2019, which now seems like 10 years ago, uh,
Yeah, right.
it hasn't even been 2 years. But yeah, we kind of go into the reasons why. Essentially, Delta E2000 uses CLAB or CILAB as the color space. And
Hmm.
CLAB always assumes that you are adapted to white. No matter what color you're looking at, your visual system is adapted to white. And we know that's not true. If you're watching a dark movie in a dark room and it's a dark scene for 10 minutes, you're not adapted to white. You're adapted to the
Sure.
colors on the screen. So
Hmm.
Delta ITP assumes that you're adapted to the color that is under test.
Gotcha.
So that's why it actually shows larger errors near black, because
Cool.
Delta E2000 assumes that you're adapted to a 100 nit white, even though the whole scene is dark and there is no white in your field of view. So
I'm glad you mentioned the video that you guys did at the SMPTE conference. Guys, if you search for that online, you'll find it pretty easily. If you really want to geek out, Catherine, one of the color scientists at Portrait, she really breaks it down and starts talking about math and formulas and stuff. And I'm watching this stuff and I understand the words she's saying, but I could never re-explain it to somebody else. But it's very interesting, and I'd highly recommend checking that out if you haven't already. It's like a 30-minute video. It's not this long drawn out thing at all. It's really good.
yeah, and if you really want to go crazy, you can read the 25-page paper that goes with
Yeah,
it.
there you go.
So yeah, the other thing is the LG 2021 TVs. Currently, we only support the Alpha 9 ones in Calman. So if I go here and go find display, select LG, we only support the Alpha 9. Alpha 7 is coming soon. So Alpha 7 would be the nano cell ones, or the kind of the nano 985 and nano 90. Also
Hmm.
the new B1 and A1 OLEDs. I don't
Right.
believe they're released yet. But the
No.
A1 is the new like entry level one that can
Sure.
only do 60 hertz panel. That'll be that'll be the that'll be the really cheap one on Black Friday, I'm sure.
Right.
So that support is coming soon. And also when you connect as an LG internal pattern generator, okay, LG. So the 2020 and 2021 Alpha 9s are the same.
Okay.
So you would connect to the same thing. The Alpha 7 2021s will also be the same as the 2019. So this is kind of a major difference between the Alpha 9 and Alpha 7 in 2020 and 2021. If you have an Alpha 9, you can validate your HDR calibration. If you have an Alpha 7, you can't, because it doesn't have the second new pattern generator that's at the beginning of the video pipeline. So if you're kind of making a decision on which to buy, know that the Alpha 9, you get a bigger 3D LUT, 33 versus 17, and you get that new pattern generator so you can validate your HDR calibration if that's important to you. One other device that is not a lot of people know about yet is LG has released a LG Studio OLED, and it's a professional version of their OLED television, and it has SDI inputs. So that's why we have it there is LG. They call it the Pro OLED, but it's listed under LG Studio. So if you go to displays and go to find display and you select LG Studio Pro OLED. So if you're working in a professional environment and one of those lands on your desk, that's what that is. It's sold through their professional like digital signage and professional monitors division.
Tyler, is it like did they take a cue from maybe Pioneer Elite where it's no speakers, no tuner, that type of thing, or
Yeah, it's definitely not a TV.
good? Good. That's great.
You're not going to be streaming Netflix on it. I don't think it has like the WebOS apps and stuff.
Sure.
And it has like most professional monitors, they have a panel on the bottom with like a knob where you can navigate the menus and have presets, and it has all of that on the front.
Oh, nice.
Tally lights to know it. Like a tally light is, you can feed information back to a monitor from a camera saying it's on air in a broadcast environment. So it's like, hey, what I'm looking at through here is actually on air right now. So don't don't move the camera or something.
No cussing.
Yeah. Another thing is, let me see where my C6 is. Can you give me like 1 minute? I want to show you all. We added a ton of new EDRs. I think this is an important thing. Hold on.
Sure. Yeah, and while you're doing that, Mark asked another question. He says, is there any advantage to selecting the legacy method? I'm assuming for the 3D LUT. It doesn't sound like it. Maybe Tyler will have a little more input on that, but you know, if we have these new methods, I don't really see a point of doing the legacy method, but you know, maybe there is some kind of off the wall sort of, you know, out there sort of scenarios where you may need to do it. So we'll ask Tyler again at the end.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of one, but we left it in there just in case. We didn't want to like take it away from the users. I'm sure at some point it will go away, but we even support the original 3D LUT method that we had from like 2014, where it was, or even earlier, where it was an iterative process, kind of like the grayscale, where it sits on one patch and does a adjustment. It was originally for the original Lumagen 3D LUT that was only a 5x5 3D LUT.
Sure.
So, okay, I'm going to connect to the C6 now. Let me. All right. Okay. So what you're going to see is what we wanted to do is we were getting enough EDRs or meter modes that it was getting a little unwieldy as far as the organization in here. So what we decided to do is have all the generic ones at the top and all of the display specific ones at the bottom. So you'll see some are removed from here. And then when we get down to the bottom, you'll see they'll have a star next to their name. And these are all the display specific ones. So some of the ones that used to be at the top in here, sprinkled in here, are now all been reprocessed and put down at the bottom. So what are we up to now? There's like 40 plus EDRs now, compared to like 12 with the i1 Display Pro. So some of the new ones we added a new one for the Apple OLED iPhone, the iPad Pro 2018 to 2020, which is probably the most common mobile display that is used in Hollywood for review of content. We added recent ones for the new Dell UP32. We added for the FSI 311K, that's a professional HDR reference monitor. We added new ones for the LG's 4K laser projector that's Calman ready. That's new. So that is a very unique Spectrum SPD because it's dual lasers. So it's not like any other laser phosphor projector that we previously had a EDR for. We also support the new LG monitor, OLED monitor that's coming out. We have all the EDRs for all the OLED TV years, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. I will be adding the new high brightness OLED panel that's in the G1 and the A90J and the Panasonic. So I'm going to create an EDR for that like this week. And so the next release of Calman that should be coming soon will have that.
I'm sorry. Did you really notice a big difference between like a 2018 versus like a 2020 LG OLED? Is that why they're separate profiles in here? Was there that big of a difference?
They're subtly different.
Yeah.
Enough that I thought it would be good to have a profile for each.
Good.
And then we've added the Samsung 2020 QLED.
Oh, good.
And we'll be adding the 2021 soon. And then we added the Sony BVM HX310 OLED LCD reference monitor, HDR reference monitor. That was kind of the replacement for the X300. So there's kind of a lot of new ones in here. And we just kind of thought it would be easier for people to find. And
Yeah.
we've renamed some just so they're more descriptive. So
Sure.
we just kind of reorganized everything and made it so, because we're going to be adding many more soon as we add more displays, and just to be able to have them in an organized way. So when we add more, people know where they're going to be and you don't have to scroll up and down to try to find what you're looking for.
Good. So are these new EDRs, or is this a function of the new Calman, or would somebody
Yes.
have to send their meter in to have them loaded?
No, the way they get updated is they come with Calman. And
Cool.
the way the EDR works is there's a spectral characterization stored in the meter. The EDR has spectral characterization of a certain display type, and those are merged, and it creates a matrix to like a meter profile. But
Okay.
since it has these two SPD signatures, it allows us to add new ones without having to have anybody send in their meter, because it has its own spectral characterization internal to the meter.
And one more question that came in, this is more of like a general question. I've been asked this many times myself. When you're picking like an LED LCD, there's usually 3 or 4 options, like white and RGB. And so like if you're just working on, let's say whatever TV, how do you know exactly whether that's a white LED, or how do you know? Is there a library somewhere, or do you just have to kind of know from?
Unfortunately not. A lot of times we just have people ask our tech support, and because we kind of know just based on the technology and what the TV's capabilities are, like is it wide gamut, is it HDR, how much P3 coverage does it have, is this a company that uses quantum dots or not?
Right.
So
okay.
Unless you have a spectro and you can look at the SPD and actually look at what the curves look like, it doesn't really, it's hard to say what it is.
Gotcha.
But reach out to our technical support and we should be able to help you out with that question.
Sammy asks, is the generic OLED WRGB profile still based off the 2017 Flanders 55 monitor?
Ours was never.
Oh,
I think he's maybe talking about the one from Lightspace, which I don't really know what they did.
yeah.
So ours are based off of LG.
Okay. Salvador asks, what about the Canon DP-V3120? Any plans to include that?
So based on all our discussions with with Canon, pretty much their RGB LEDs are the same for their range of HDR monitors. So the closest one is probably the 2421.
Okay.
If we do get one of those 32-inch in-house, then I would definitely create an EDR for it, but we just don't have one at our office.
Stephen asks, and I think I know the answer to this one, but Stephen asks, do you expect the Samsung QLED auto-cal process to be compatible with the Aurora engine? I would say no, because I don't think Samsung uses LUTs, right?
Yep. So unless it uses 3D LUTs, it will not be.
So is there still, for going forward, or is there still going to be an auto-cal Samsung workflow just to do what it can do?
Absolutely.
Cool. Good.
We're working on integration with their 2021 TVs now.
Good.
So
good. And they switched over to IP for control, I heard.
Yes, there is kind of one downside to that is you cannot unlock the Cal Day and Cal Night modes over IP. So you only get access to the movie modes.
Oh, okay. Well, not the end of the world. And then one more in this realm, and we can.
If your TV still has the serial commands, you can still use the serial adapter.
Oh, okay.
To connect.
Cool. And one more question in this universe, and we can move on. Ladislav says, if I calibrate Lumigen with a 3D LUT, will there be some options to use the old 3D LUT mode?
Yes, because we already support that.
Okay.
We already support Lumigen for 3D LUT with the old the old engine or the
Cool.
legacy engine.
Very good. Guys, keep those questions coming in. I think that's it for at least this part of it. Tyler, unless you wanted to talk about this a little bit more, I think we can move on to the next subject.
Sure. So I guess I wanted to talk a little bit about just kind of, we talked previously about some advanced things in Calman, and one of the things that I don't think a lot of people have seen is design mode and the power of Calman Ultimate and what
Oh,
you can
yeah.
do with it. And I don't want to go into like a here's everything, but just a little, I just wanted to show people a little bit of what was possible in design mode. So if I go into design mode, and so let me see if I can do it on my keyboard. I can hit Alt D, and now I'm in design mode, right? So now all of these objects can be moved around. Like, hey, I just want this here. I can say, okay, bring to front. Now it's in front of everything. If I want it like this, I don't know why you would want it like that, but you can. So this is actually how we design the workflows. And if you have Calman Ultimate, this is the powerful feature that you get. One other thing that you can do is building this page from scratch actually takes a lot of work. You have to like resize everything, point the data structures to everything. Like this particular chart, if I go to properties, I tell it, okay, this is I wanted a gamut saturation. The source of the data is this. So there's all the, like, here's the size, here's the axis. And so there's a bunch of stuff you can select, right? But if you just like this page and you want to put it in your workflow, or take 10 different pages from 10 different workflows and combine them into one workflow, the powerful thing that you can do is you can just right click and say export layout. We call a workflow page a layout, and that allows you to export this whole thing as one object, and then you can say import layout in your new, then you can export whatever layouts you want all into the same folder. Then you can create a new workflow and create new categories here, and then you can import those layouts back into the workflow. And that allows you to, without having to code up and lay out all these pages from scratch, it allows you to customize a workflow. Now, sometimes people just don't like one step. Well, you can just say, delete this step, remove current layout. Now that step is gone and it just goes from Luminance to 3D LUT.
Oh, sure.
Or you can just import one step. I was talking with a calibrator and he wanted to add a dynamic range page to one of our workflows because his particular way of calibrating it, he liked to check dynamic range for a specific reason before he did the calibration. But that workflow did not have dynamic range. So he could just go into a workflow that had the dynamic range page, export the layout, re-import it, and then when you've made your changes, you can go save workflow template, and it'll ask you, where do you want to save it? What do you want the name to be? And make sure you rename it to something that's not the default name in Calman.
That won't be confusing at all.
and then it will show up under this custom area in Calman. It will normally, when you install Calman and you have design mode, you will not see this custom category. But if you create a custom workflow or save a workflow with your specific settings, it will now show up in this custom folder or this custom layout or category. The other thing is, if you just want to change things like, I want this to always be power 2.4 instead of BT 1886, I could just take that change only, save the workflow as a custom one, and even if you just make that subtle change, it will save the workflow. And in that case, you can do that without even having design mode. So if you just change that setting and save the workflow, you don't need design mode for that. If you want to actually change objects on screen or import and export layouts, that's when you need design mode.
I was just saying, Glenn asks, he says, I use design mode. Has there been any updates or new features to design mode, or are you just showing people what already exists?
This is not a new feature, but one new feature is interesting, is some people have extensive workflows. Professional calibrators, a lot of times they have their own bespoke one that they built from scratch that is
Oh
not
yeah.
like anybody else's.
We have a mutual calibrator friend. He told me he spent like 8 hours or something making his own custom workflow, but it looks sweet.
I think that it could be 10 times that amount, but
Right. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm
um,
sure.
but one thing is we added this feature to be able to save it with a password, where, because if I have my workflow that I spent time and money, you know, my time's worth money, and I want to, you know, maybe let somebody use it or license it to them, but I don't want them to know how it works underneath the hood. We have a new feature where it'll allow you to password protect the workflow. So somebody else can run the workflow, but they cannot go into design mode without the password.
Oh,
Even we
interesting.
can't. We have a way to unlock it for you, like if you forget the password, but it's not easy. And unless it's an employee of Portrait Displays, nobody will be able to get that password or break the password or be able to look at it. But if you do forget it for some unknown reason, we could recover the password for you. So it's not like you're screwed if you forget
Yeah.
the password thing, but
And
it just allows somebody to develop a workflow, and they could even charge people and sell it to them.
oh, sure.
So it's kind of a new opportunity to have a customized workflow and protect your intellectual property and hard, you know, blood, sweat, and tears that you put into
Sure.
it. So
It,
somebody just can't come in and see exactly what you did, because there's a lot of automation you can do and how things work, you know, have one page reference another page data, and there's just kind of endless things you can do that are really complicated. And if you figure that all out yourself and you want to be able to offer other people to use it without actually, you know, just being able to rip you off as far as seeing what you did and replicating it, or taking your pages and bringing it into their workflow, that's a kind of a new cool thing. I'm going to be putting out a tutorial video on our YouTube on how to
oh,
make
good.
that work.
You know what it reminds me of is I know a lot of musicians, especially guitar players, they'll like make these profiles or you know they'll make like a specific sound of this amplifier and this guitar with these effects, and then they'll sell those as like a package. So if you're a guy at home trying to learn how to play these songs, you could just import these profiles and boom, you sound just like that guy or at least close to it. That's what it kind of sounds like to me. Glenn has another question. I just want to make sure everybody's super clear on this, so I'm glad he asked again. The design mode is only an ultimate, right?
Yep. So
Yeah.
it's really a professional feature. And it's my understanding that Studio and Video Pro can open a ultimate workflow that was created, but they can't
You
create
can't make
them
one.
themselves.
Yeah. Something I've been using a lot more lately is the profile, the meter profile workflow. So
Yeah, let me open that.
it seems like I'm getting a, I would say better results, or at least I can see the results a little bit better to see like where there might be any discrepancies. So Fabio asks, great question too. Any plans to put Nist verification in the meter profile workflow?
That's something that I've entered in as a feature request. So
Cool.
to have automated pass-fail testing.
Nice. Nice. So yeah, I've been using this quite a bit lately. Before this, I would just do it in the meter tab at the top. But just in case people haven't seen this before, let's go ahead and talk about it.
Yeah, so the idea is you connect your Spectro and your, which I don't have I don't have a Spectro hooked up, but you would connect your Spectro and your colorimeter and your pattern generator. You would then measure your reference data here with your Spectro. Then you would create your profile. The reference meter is the Spectro, the target meter is your colorimeter.
Right.
If you're doing an i1 Display Pro or C6, you want to select this one, the raw XYZ mode, as your base profile for your C6 or i1 Display Pro. And then you'd create your profile. Then you would measure through the profile. And then here you would compare. So your reference meter data will be on this line, your profile meter with your profile through here, and then you would select each color. So we just looked at white, and then it would show the X, Y, and little X, little Y, big Y, and then you would go through each color and check. And it will also show a zoomed in version.
Good.
And the dots should pretty much be on top of each other. So
Another question that came in, I've actually wondered this myself, but when you're making the profile, it's just looking for the difference, right? So in other words, like if I'm in cinema mode and I make a profile, would that be any difference than if I had the TV in like standard mode and made a profile? Or do you want to be in your calibrated mode when you make the profile?
Truly, you want to be in like the native panel mode. So on an LG, or something similar, what I would do is I connect to the TV, reset one of the SDR picture modes, set it to like OLED Light 30, which is like 100 nits, and then after I've done do the DDC reset, then set it to 100 nits, then do the profile, so it will be in its native state of primaries and white point. You know, the white point will be really blue. It'll be like over here, but that's expected because you want as little processing as possible happening.
Gotcha. Victor asks, will there still be a black crush problem on LG OLEDs after the 3D LUT calibration? Does a new color engine solve this?
So we still have the shadow detail adjustment that you would use.
Perfect.
And that only applies to the C10 and the C1 or that generation. The C9 and older, LG had a generic lift near black that they would apply. On the C10 or G10 or the 2020 models and the 2021 models, they're not doing that for the calibrated mode. So if your panel has more black crush, then you might need to lift it up even more. And in that case, so if I go here and I talk about the shadow detail control, you don't want to change your blend point, which is the detail point. You just want to change the shadow detail value up and down. Now 320 is a good starting number. My particular GX, I need it to be like 450 or higher before it's correct. Some I've seen need less than 320. So the idea is you could set it to the default, hit commit, bring up the shadow detail test patterns that we work with Spears and Munsell on that you can get for free. I think it's on AVS form. The link to download them is in my signature. So if you just find a post that I have made, and then look at the near black detail and turn it up until you can see everything, and then start lowering it until you can like just make out it's pretty much the same concept as adjusting brightness. We're looking at much more precision here. We can go up by just one 10-bit code value instead of looking, and the shadow detail patterns are 10-bit as well. So it's a much more precise way to adjust this than just look at a digital value of 17. Because between 16 and 17, there's 4 10-bit code values. So you could be crushing 65, 66, 67. You can see 68, which equals 17, but you've lost that shadow detail, because if you just look at an 8-bit pattern, you would never know because it doesn't show enough resolution between 17 and black.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand this, and for the people who are listening, like if we did this kind of step by step, so you would run the LUT, right? And then you would look at that test pattern and you would modify the TV based on this second OLED shadow detail value number.
Yeah, so I would probably just start out with 320. So you would just come in and hit this on off button, right? And that will commit the values. And then look at the pattern again. You might even, you probably need to be in a pitch black room. If
Oh
you
yeah.
never watch in pitch black, then the whole thing is kind of pointless. You'll probably never see this black crush anyways. It's
Hmm.
such a small area that you really need to be in a pitch black room.
Have you
But
seen the?
then,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
oh, I was going to say, and if it's still crushed, then increase this value and hit commit again and kind of just do an iterative process looking at it. Now, I've went to the crazy thing of like getting a jeweler's loop and looking at it, and you can just see like, okay, I can just see the white subpixels lighting up on 65, so I'm good.
That was.
HDR is a little bit trickier because you have to, if you so since we do the calibration in gamma mode and then we uncheck enable calibration, it turns on PQ processing. You really want to make the adjustment, or you have to do the adjustment in enable calibration mode, then
Mhm.
uncheck it, then check it with the loop while you're looking at the HDR version, then enable calibration again, then do it. So it's a little bit more repetitive, but
Sure.
once you kind of find the value for your TV, you should be able to use it every
I
time.
You mentioned the jeweler's loop, which I think is funny, and the reason I bring this up is because I've taken I've taken like the cardboard roll out of like a roll of paper towels or toilet paper or something, and you can get right up on the screen in a pitch black room and get your eye in there like you're looking through a telescope almost. And I've seen,
Yeah.
that's like the kind of the cheaper, the cheap
Yeah,
way
so
of
you don't
doing
get
it.
so you don't get a glare from anything else, like
Right.
on the test pattern that's brighter, like the
Yeah.
numbers. Um,
Um, Steve has a question about this. He says, how do you get the S&M pattern on the screen, and do you need to have the calibration enabled to commit the load value? So I think you just answered the second part of that
yeah.
question.
So
Yeah.
the idea is you just put them. So when you're using the internal pattern generator, it has a checkbox that is. Let me see. I should just be able to connect to the LG. Hold on. Okay. It has this box, pattern on and off. So you'd want to turn that off to turn off the pattern so you can see through. And you would just put them on the same thumb drive that you're using for those video files that you played if you're using the internal calibration.
Sure.
If you're using a pattern generator, then the idea would be you would switch to the media player, play it, look at it, and it will still apply because the 1D LUT is global for the picture mode. It doesn't matter if you're in the media player or in the HDMI input. You should
Hmm.
still see the same thing.
Nice. And is if you look back at the shadow detail menu, there was a value at the bottom that was 320, right? So
Yep,
is
that's the
that like,
value you want to change. And
yeah,
and this value we worked with LG on. This is kind of like the average value that would work on most panels, but some need more and some need less. But this
so
is a good starting point. So I'd probably
it,
just start out with 320, commit it, then start looking at it. If I can
right.
see all the points and they're like bright, then maybe I'll start lowering it until it starts clipping like code value 65
Hmm.
and then bring it back up or something. Um, so there's a kind of a lot of trial and error.
Sure.
But if you never watch TV in a black room, it's probably not necessary. But in Hollywood is super critical about shadow detail and stuff, and they
Hmm.
want to know if something is clipped or not. They want to know if it's the content or the panel, and they're always mastering in a dark room with a bias light behind it. So it's super
Totally.
critical. This near black stuff is super critical.
Is that 320 an arbitrary number, or does it mean something?
So it is a 10-bit full range code value
Oh, cool. Gotcha. Gotcha. Gotcha.
because the LUT on the LG TVs, the LUTs are always applied in full range. The limited range, full range conversion is at the very beginning of the pipeline, and at some point it gets converted to full range, and it goes through the LUTs in full range. So
Right.
this is a full range value. So this is the first entry above black in the LUT. So normally it would be like 32 or 64. I can't remember off the top of my
Yeah.
head. I think it's
That's okay.
32. But
Um,
we need to give it much more code value to get it to actually turn on out of black.
so good excuse me, good question from Sammy. So right now you're in SDR cinema mode and you're going to commit the OLED shadow detail value. Will that OLED shadow detail value and what you're changing here, will that just be on SDR cinema or will that apply to all the
Yes.
picture modes or?
It would apply just, so one important thing to note is this only works if you've just done the 1D LUT and 3D LUT. Because what this does is it modifies the 1D LUT that is currently active in Calman in here.
Oh, gotcha.
So
So
it might,
this,
like, you can't go do it later. You'd have to start your calibration over again. So it's important to note that this is like, you have to do it at the time of calibration. You cannot, because we're modifying the 1D LUT that's in memory and resending it. Every time you hit commit, we modify the 1D LUT and send it. And really what we're modifying is, so the lowest point we usually measure is 2.3%. And that equals code value in 8-bit 23. So this is telling us that it's only modifying up to code value 23. So we're only modifying the LUT below the lowest point we actually measured. Because we know the point we actually measured is what it should be, but we're just modifying what below the point we measured. So we lift the first point out of black and then we draw a line to the point we measured, the lowest point we measured. So it doesn't affect just the lowest code value. It kind of, think of it as like a fulcrum where we anchor to the lowest point we measured and then we lift up. And this can go up to 1,000. I don't know a panel or any panel that needed 1,000. But what it will never do is it will never raise black, because we're only modifying the first entry in the 1D LUT is always 0, and we're never changing that. We're only changing the first entry above black. So you don't have to worry about this. Whereas if you try to fix this with the brightness control, it would raise the black level.
Totally.
So that's why we work very closely with LG to provide this very precise low level control to make coming out of black per panel. Because there is some variability per panel. I've seen some people have to set this to 150. Some people,
oh wow,
mine is like 450. So there is some variability. But like, if you're starting at 320, don't set it to like 322 and try again. You'll probably see no difference. Jump in like, 20 or 30 increments or something.
Sure.
Just because one 10-bit code value is like
You'll
nothing
never see
there.
it.
Actually, this is one 15-bit code value. Sorry. It's not even 10, because the 1D LUT is 1,024 entries, but it has 15 bits of precision. So the top of the LUT is 32,000. So this is a 15-bit. So you really have to move it in like 20 to 30 increments to actually see a difference.
So just to kind of recap this, the shadow detail value and anything you do here only affects the SDR cinema mode because that's what you're in right now.
Yep.
Okay.
And it only works after you've created a 1D LUT. You can do it after the 1D LUT or after the 3D LUT. I've just always said, hey, do it after the 3D LUT because everything is already done and now you're just tweaking this.
Sure.
But honestly, the lowest node in the 3D LUT is on the Alpha 9 is like 3%. So it's still below the lowest node that you can adjust in the 3D LUT. So it shouldn't really matter, but I've just done the 1D, then the 3D, then adjusted this.
Steve asks, for 2020 and 2021 Alpha 9s, you said the internal pattern generator allows verification of the LUT. Does this include Dolby Vision?
No, because the internal generator cannot generate Dolby Vision metadata.
Yep, good point. Good point. And then Victor asks, what would happen if you used a different value than 23 on the OLED shadow detail point? Basically, what does that 23 mean?
That 23 is the code value of the lowest point you actually adjusted when you were doing the autocal of the 1D LUT.
Gotcha.
So you can make it higher, but then you would be affecting points you already autocaled. You can make it lower, and then you would have point. It would just slide the fulcrum down further, and you'd have this gap of things that you never adjusted.
Mm-hmm.
So
So that should stay, I mean, I would think in general practice every day, that should stay at
always stay the same.
23. And
Yep.
the
And
shadow,
it will actually switch to 14 for HDR because we actually go down to 1.4% in
oh yeah,
HDR for the grayscale versus SDR.
okay. So 23 is the default, that's good. And then the shadow detail value is just based on your test pattern and what your eyes are seeing.
Yep.
And once you
Exactly.
find out those two things, boom, commit, and that's it, right? Probably just takes a
Yep.
second.
Yeah, but I mean, you'll probably do it 3 or 4 times to turn it up, and maybe it's too bright and you want to go lower.
Right.
Because, like I said, it's all subjective.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you have a very expensive meter, it's hard to even measure how dark these values are.
Yeah,
They're
good
barely
point.
visible to the human eye in a dark room when you're adapted.
Right.
So
That's a good point. And okay, cool. That's all of the questions in regards to this, at least. I think we've got, we're actually over by 7 minutes or so. I don't know if you guys have any kind of wrap up questions. I know there was a couple questions at the end, but let me find, there was one specific question from Mark. He says, where'd it go? Any changes with respect to Dolby Vision calibration? Also realize this is a sensitive topic. Any hopes in the Dolby Vision post-calibration results improving in the near future?
I do know that that is a Dolby and LG question because it
Mhm.
is a firmware situation for them. There's nothing that needs to be changed in Calman. So
Um, I've heard this from other people. Mark's mentioned this to me before, but they send me, some of these guys will send me screenshots or something, and the Dolby Vision looks pretty good, and all of a sudden there's like a green spike in the middle of the grayscale or something, and then it levels back out. I don't know if this is just maybe like a few isolated things here and there, but a week or two ago I worked on a ZX, the 77ZX, and when I ran the Dolby Vision on that, it was perfect. So I don't know if this is maybe a certain version of firmware or maybe certain models are affected. Do you have any insight on that?
nope, I just know that Dolby and LG have been working on it. So
Okay. Okay.
that's all the information I have right now.
Yeah. Easy enough. And somebody earlier asked something about, I think it was Glenn asked about iPhones or something. Let me just track down that question real quick. Very interested in analyzing laptop and mobile phones HDR uh, performance. Any updates coming for laptops and mobile phones?
Um, Pretty much, it's a challenge. We have Client 3 HDR. Um, it can be a little finicky. Um, but honestly, what a lot of people have been doing is using like Ryan Maciola's uh, HDR MP4 files that
Sure.
have like the grayscale sweeps,
Mm-hmm.
because then you know you're going through the exact pipeline that of video in HDR on a computer. And
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of, there's a lot of tone mapping happening by the operating system, so it's kind of it's kind of a moving target right now.
Right,
So
right.
if it, I think that even though it's not very elegant and it's a kind of a pain in the butt, that's kind of the best results that you can get right now is
Mm-hmm.
using MP4 HDR test patterns. And then in
Let's
Calman, you can just, Calman has this feature if I hit disconnect. So say you went into the HDR analysis workflow, right? Or we call it the HDR toolkit now. And I went to the grayscale tracking
Glenn
and it's
says,
set up.
by the way, this is what he's been doing. So good
Yeah.
job, Glenn.
Yeah. So we do have this thing called pattern change prompts. And what it does is if I do a read series here, it will actually tell me, hey, display this RGB value. Actually, that is my pattern insertion value, I think, because the pattern insertion is turned on. Now it's doing here, let me turn off pattern insertion. Okay, now it's telling me, hey, put up the 235 patch, but
Right.
it kind of waits for you to switch, and then you say, okay, then it takes the reading, then it waits again for you to switch.
Mm-hmm.
So that's currently the best solution right now. We're definitely investigating other ways to make that easier.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, Glenn was saying it's not easy to do that, but it sounds like that's what you have to do right now. Sammy asks, how about any integration with direct connection to like any of the new Sony projectors or the JVCs like the NX5, 7, 9, etc.?
Nothing to announce right now.
Shh. Everybody just stay quiet, wait and listen. Trip says, will any chance we'll eventually see support on AutoCal on other brands of TVs such as Vizio?
Nothing to announce right now.
All right, cool. And this is actually a good question. Is the HDR analysis workflow that we just looked at, is that available in Calman Home as well?
Unfortunately, it's only in the professional version of Calman.
Okay, so Pro or Ultimate. Good. Another question, I've actually run into this a couple times, and guys, this will kind of wrap it up. So if you have any last minute questions here, go ahead and shoot them in now. I notice sometimes when I'm making, like, say, a profile, if I don't click like the 100 white patch beforehand, the profile always errors out. It's almost like the generator doesn't put the patch up on the TV fast enough. So I end up reading gray and the profile is ruined. I got to start all over. But if I hit that white patch first, everything goes smoothly. So is this just maybe with
what I
USB
found,
hubs and stuff, or?
what I found is after you connect to a generator, a lot of the times it's just waiting to receive a signal. And I've always found it's better to, if you've just connected to the generator and you're going to do something, put up one patch first so it does its internal process and gets in the right mode. Because
Gotcha.
like, for example, on the 6G and the VideoForge Pro, it has to switch to a different type. Like if you have color bars up, it has to switch to a different type of pattern, then process everything. But once it's in that mode, then it switches quickly.
Okay.
So I usually just click one patch before when I first connect to the generator,
Cool.
just to make sure it's outputting and everything is actually displaying on the screen.
Good. So guys, hear that? That's awesome. Put up a patch before, and yeah, that should be good. And maybe this is the last one from Victor. Will there be a specialized workflow for HDR calibration for projectors?
That is always a challenging topic because different people do different things. So, some people
Yes.
use it with Illumigen, some people, there really isn't any standard. Some people use multipliers.
I've seen
It's
that
just
more
hard
than
to have,
anything.
yeah, it's just hard to make a one size fits all, because then I need to defend why we recommend this process. And there's just going from 1,000 nits to 100 nits and how that should be done is, I mean, I think there's a reason that you don't see Dolby Vision projectors yet, is because in theory it could be done, but there's way too many variables about screen size, peak brightness.
Totally.
I
Room
just
color.
don't think, I just don't think there's a industry consensus yet like there is around calibrating flat panels.
Yeah, good. I have seen, I'm sure you have too, some of the big Dolby Vision projectors and some of the Dolby movie theaters. Remember movie theaters? Remember those things?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
that's I won't go on any other screen.
oh yeah. I mean, gosh, seeing perfect black in a theater on that big of a screen, the first time I saw it was pretty impressive. It was awesome. Awesome,
Yep.
awesome. Well, guys, that looks like that's it for the questions. I'm just gonna fire my camera back up so we can say bye to Tyler.
Okay, I'm gonna stop presenting screen.
Very cool. Thank you guys so much. I know we ran a little bit over, but I know this is always an interesting topic, and I know you guys get a lot of knowledge out of this and a lot of fun. So if you guys have any specific questions for myself or Tyler, I'll field the questions for Tyler. So feel free, guys, shoot me an email. It's real simple, jason@murideo.com, and I'll field any extra questions that you might have. In case you have any friends who might have been watching the Apple event or something today and didn't catch this, we're going to put it up on YouTube in the next day or so. So feel free to pass those links around. And yeah, we'll talk, Tyler, maybe when there's some more updates in the future. I think you said, we said before that normally there's, maybe 3 or 4 updates throughout the year, but now you're anticipating smaller updates, but more frequently, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Awesome, guys. Well, stay in tune for those types of things. As Tyler said, follow them on their social medias. And I know they're very good about announcing the new stuff. So thank you again, guys. Again, jason@murideo.com if you have any further questions. Tyler, always fun, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. All right, guys, we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.